What is up, fight fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Scrap Report. I am, of course, the Shogun of Ringside Intel, Jason Burgos, and with me, as always, is the leader of loathing, the Duke of despising, and that is the one and only Ant Walker, Senor ABW. It's great to be back together. It's been a long time since we did the show. It's been a few weeks.
It's been a few weeks, man. It's been a while. We've been in touch with one another due to the company Slack channel and text messages as well. So it hasn't been a life totally without Jason Burgos, but I'm very happy to see your face today, man.
Likewise, and it's good to see it from a different perspective. Made the move now in Ohio. Got a nice little window view outside in my little mini office. I'm just feeling good, and seeing you here makes me feel better.
All right, see, and I see you got the New York plate behind you right there. You're trying to rep, although you are officially a traitor to New York City, sir, because you left. So
yeah, and I switched my plates, and I was like, let me just keep this last memento, that dirty ass overpriced city that made me the person I am today. But now I'm full on Ohioan, OH, everybody. But we have a lot of topics to talk about this week. A lot of stuff to catch up on, and also to look ahead. We're going to talk some Jake Paul, Mike Perry that fights this week. We're going to do some early preview predictions for UFC 304 is coming up real soon. We're going to talk. Anthony was in person for the recent Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal fight, and that was a very interesting experience for him that you will get to talk about. Also, Ronda Rousey talking about concussions at 6 years old. Oh my Lord, Ronda, please stop talking. And then also Alex Pereira, not interested in Tom Aspinall fight. That's going to be something else we're going to do a little debate about. And also maybe talk a little bit of Shakur Stevenson. He's a hot button topic, not for reasons he wants at the moment. But first, let's get into it. Jake Paul versus Mike Perry fights coming up. Originally, it was supposed to be Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson in Dallas Cowboy Stadium. Obviously, that's not going to happen because of Mike being elderly at this point. He couldn't make the date. It's still set for later this year. But we get maybe arguably a more interesting fight with Mike Perry, who's become the face of bare knuckle fighting championship after a pretty solid stint in UFC. He became a bit of a fan favorite, although he didn't, have the kind of success he wanted. So the first thing I wanted to say, and we talked a little bit about before, but now that the fight is here, there's a build for it, and all this kind of had time to breathe after the announcement like a month or so ago. Is Mike Perry, in your mind, is he a more dangerous fight than Mike Tyson, considering Mike Perry's been doing the specific boxing training for BKFC? He's been better at that than he was in UFC and MMA. Is this like a real sleeper upset kind of fight than Jake Paul needs to be worried?
Yeah, this is definitely a more dangerous fight than, a near 60-year-old Mike Tyson with ulcer flare-ups. Like that's, right there, it just says all that you need to know about the level of danger that he's not experiencing. This is a guy who is only, I want to say, like 7 or 8 years older than him. So he's like within the same age range, roughly. I mean, far younger than all of his other past MMA opponents.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So, and I want to say he knocked out Nate Robinson, who's like on kidney dialysis now. Like this. So this is the quality of opponents that Jake Paul has faced. So this is obviously a bump up. This is an active fighter who is doing his damnedest to make a name for himself in the world of combat sports. And he's done a spectacular job in BKFC doing that. The thing is, though, this falls into the other sort of issue with some of Jake Paul's opponents is that they tend to be a lot smaller than him. And that's really the biggest hurdle for Mike Perry is going to be the size difference. Like we look at like Tyron Woodley, for instance, even the past his prime version of Tyron Woodley. Look at that first fight. That there were moments where he pressed the attack and he was really getting the better of Paul. Had he been a little bit bigger, we might be talking about a totally different outcome.
Yeah.
Mike Perry's going to run into that same brick wall.
Yeah, and I think he perfectly nailed it, because that's the thing. The fight with Mike Tyson was supposed to be at heavyweight, so Jake's coming down a little bit, but Mike Perry predominantly fought welterweight a lot in the UFC. So that's a big factor. And then you factor in, for all the knocks against Jake Paul, being an influencer turned boxer, like we see with him and we see with his brother in WWE, these dudes are really good athletes. Jake is a very good athlete to come in and have the level of success that he's had with limited experience. So he's going to be bigger, probably the better athlete. I mean, I don't know if it's as dangerous or bigger threat than a Tyson fight. I think Tyson, even at his advanced age, he still is a freak athlete, and his power is always the oldest in the go. But I'm almost a little bit more interested in this fight. I think will make it more interesting. It's not like, once Jake gets past the first couple rounds, it'll be less of a fight. And I don't want to see Mike Tyson possibly knocked out. Like, Perry is tough. He's gotten a lot of experience in training with boxing, and he's gonna give him a good fight. Even if he gets knocked out, like, this is very much he's gonna go out and shield. I think he fully gets, and I think we've seen that with his time in BKFC. He gets opportunities. He understands this is a huge opportunity for him to make money. So I think he's going to definitely go out on the shield, make it as entertaining a fight as possible. And in that way, maybe he'll push Jake. Maybe he'll be wild, and his chin will make it really crazy and interesting, more so than even Nate Diaz tried to do in that fight. That said, hypothetical, if Mike Perry scores the upset, which it isn't a crazy, shocking upset, but because of what we mentioned, the size, the age difference, he's not going to be the favorite. If Mike Perry wins this fight, does that mean, like, is the Mike Tyson fight then canceled? Is there any reason to care about Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson if he loses to Mike Perry?
Depends on how he loses to Mike Perry. That will be the thing. If it's a loss like the Tommy Fury one, where it's like this debated split decision, probably can get away with it, because he rolled right into the Nate Diaz fight after that, and there was pretty much no disruption to the Jake Paul like hype train. It just kept going, and it just diverted course slightly. So I see that being possible, because you also got to think too, Mike Tyson is a megastar in his own right, and while he is far removed from being a relevant pro fighter, he's still like this mega personality that has an international following, that you can walk into a back alley in any country in the world and people will know that's Mike Tyson. Yeah. So with his name attached to it, and even the fact, you still can't erase the fact that he's an old man with medical issues that's jumping in there against a younger guy. There's going to be some intrigue in that. Even if it's, sick people that just want to see terrible things, like there's some intrigue in that. So there's still value in that fight regardless. I do think it will lose some luster at the very least, though.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll still happen. There's just too many coals, or too many, I forgot the term, but there's too much going on. Netflix is already involved with it. They still made it's still going to be in Dallas Cowboys Stadium. There's too many deals set. There's too many expectations, but I think it'll be shockingly affected, and the interest will be like, it will go from, maybe it's one of those shocking kind of most watched fights in boxing this year and the last few years, to all of a sudden there's going to be conversations about how big of a disappointment and disaster was, because just people will watch on Netflix. But if he loses to Mike Perry, I think that'll kill the interest in such a massive way. So what's your prediction? How do you feel this fight goes? Can he get a finish on Mike Perry? I think he definitely can. Like, how do you see that? What's your prediction for Jake Paul versus Mike Perry?
How many is this, an 8-rounder?
I think so. I don't think Jake's done anything close to a 12-round fight yet.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I kind of think. I think that Jake Paul wins simply because he has been training just pure boxing, and at such a high level for a while now. I know Mike Perry has dialed in a lot with his hands, but being a knucklehead only gets you so far. I think Paul has proven himself to be enough of a tactician with enough devastating power to really stop a lot of people who are going to jump in there against him, unless, of course, they are these elite pro boxers. So I think Jake Paul wins. I'm not quite. I'll lean toward him not getting the finish. Mike Perry does have the knucklehead factor, and the knucklehead factor does keep you from getting knocked out a lot of times. So he's probably going to endure a beating in way to a very lopsided decision against him. I'm
gonna go knockout. And I just looked up. You are correct. It's an 8-round fight. I think he's going to get to him just because like I said before, I think Mike's going to try to make it an interesting fight. He's going to push him. He's just going to try to be aggressive. He's going to try to just push him around and bully him a little bit. And I just think even then with his experience, Jake's just a little bit more fundamentally sound, and he's going to prepare for him. And he's got legit power. I think he's just going to catch him with one of those shots he doesn't see coming, just like he's done to a lot of these talented former MMA fighters, stuff like that. So I'm going to go 7th round KO, and he'll probably knock him down once, maybe the third or whatever. And it'll be fun though. It's not going to disappoint. I wouldn't be surprised if this is maybe one of Jake Paul's more entertaining fights, just because Mike Perry is just such a dog, and he's going to make something out of it, and he's going to try to make something out of the opportunity. That's honestly probably the biggest fight of his career, just because of the spotlight that's on Jake Paul.
Yeah, you know what? I think the more interesting thing on here will be how Mike Perry's success in BKFC translates over to the boxing ring. To like that's where I'm more interested in. I just want to see if the same sort of punches are going to work for him. If he changes like his shot selection. There's so many little nuances that I'm really going to be watching for in that fight.
Yeah, and as nothing against, he's got wins over Luke Rockhold, Eddie Alvarez, Michael Page, even and they're even there. I think there's just a difference in the caliber. And not to say Jake Paul's an amazing fighter, but again, he's been training this specifically. He's got some solid talent. I think like you just said, I think there'll be a difference, and we'll notice it right away. Not maybe as much as we notice it with some of the MMA guys, but I think we'll notice it because despite some of those MMA guys he fought, Tyron Woodley, Anderson Silva, Nate Diaz, I still think are more technically better as boxers than Mike Perry is. But Mike Perry is just tougher and stuff like that. So moving on from there, let's get into some UFC 304 preview prediction talk. The event's coming up at the end of the month. It's been a hot button topic itself because the event's going to be on late at night in the UK, so us Americans can see it at the times we're used to because we're so important. And God forbid they do a daytime pay-per-view, because those are always fun and we like it, and would like to have something to watch in the afternoon on a Saturday and go live our lives a Saturday night. Thanks, UFC.
I would love to see my family.
Yes, come on, UFC.
Love to spend time with my kids. That would be great.
I feel for the single guys that have to cover MMA, and just Saturday nights are in the crapper, most nights. I mean, dating on a Sunday after night is not the same. But that said, we're gonna talk a few fights. We're not gonna talk all the fights just because not every fight is interesting. We're gonna focus on the 4 best fights or storylines or most interesting. And the first one I wanted to talk about was Muhammad Mokaev.
Mokaev, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Mokaev, yeah.
Although I'm certainly no patron saint of pronunciation, but
neither of us are. And he's going to be fighting Manel Cap, or it's Cap, right? Manel Cap.
Cop. I thought it was Cop or
Cop. Sorry. No Cap.
It could be wrong. No Cap.
No Cap. And that's a really interesting fight. It's one of the flyweight division doesn't get a ton of love. It's just always been like that. It's been like that even in boxing too. But these are two of the better fighters making their way up. Manel, had his little bumps when he first came into UFC, but he's really caught a bit of momentum. Although fights falling through, injuries has really effed up his momentum a little bit in the last year or so. And then Mokaev is really just a very talented fighter. Another one of these Russian guys, fantastic grappler, unbeaten. Entering the fight, it's a pick'em, which just shows you how good they both are, and in very different ways. And Cap was a fantastic fighter in Rizin and stuff like that. It could very well set up maybe the next contender to Alexander Pantoja, which is how big this kind of fight is. Definitely Mokaev's probably his biggest fight of his career. Maybe the same could be said a toughest fight for Cap. How do you see this fight going? Because this is a very classic striker versus grappler kind of matchup.
Yeah, this is a very classic matchup. Now, before I give a pick, I'm just going to pick for this fight not happening because Manel Cobb has not been very reliable in making it to fight night. Right,
that's very true.
So I have a hard time devoting mental energy to what's going to happen in his fights until the cage door shuts behind him. Like that's sort of where I'm at with this. Like all the the misses on the scale and withdrawals and whatnot. So I don't know what's going on that end. Hopefully he makes it. If he does make it, I do think Mokaev probably gets the win, and that's only because the striker versus grappler classic format that we've seen a million times, most of the time the grappler wins. And Mokaev is very, very much like a workman-like fighter that's going to just sort of go through the checklist of how to get someone down and drag them down and suffocate them. He's not afraid of making it a not too aesthetically pleasing fight to get the win. He will just get the win, and that's what his MO is. Kopp is the far more exciting fighter who has the far more exciting highlight reel and by far the better athlete, I think.
Yeah.
But that athleticism gets slowed down when you got somebody that's a grinder. So I think Kopp walks away with an L in this one.
Yeah.
It would be nice to see like some flying knee as Mokaev goes in for a takedown or something like that. But the chances of things like that happening against a guy of his caliber and his style of fight, very slim.
Yeah, I agree. It just, I feel like, and maybe you agree, I feel like I've seen this fight before. Like it just like this guy's just too talented of a grappler. Maybe Manel catches him. He gets him early. He's prepared. He's better defensively against a takedown, all that stuff. But it just feels like this is that classic thing where a good striker who's always been kind of good, but maybe just can't get over that hump to take it to a next level. And this is just those fights that are examples of just coming up short and just staying, like not being a title contender. Hopefully Manel breaks through. But and to add to your point, just of how inconsistent his schedule has been. He fought, let's see, 2 times in 2021. No, 3 times in 4 times. Look at, I'm going 4 times in 2021. 2 of them were losses. One to the reigning champion right now. He gets a 2-fight winning streak. He has only 1 fight in all of 2024. 2 planned bouts were canceled in that year. Then he only has 1 fight again in all of last year, and we have 3 fights were canceled or something fell through or he messed up or whatever that year. And then this year, 2 planned fights against Matthias Nicolau that fell through in January and April. Also, shout out to UFC to Tapology. Tapology has all these stats.
All the cancellations. So beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. So this like his schedule's been so, because I think that hurts too. While on the flip side, Mokaev, let's look at his schedule. He doesn't have quite the same experience. He only has 11 fights, but he fights somewhat regularly.
Yeah. He's been consistent.
Yes, 3 times in 2022, twice last year. He beat Tim Elliott early this year, just a few months ago. He got a big win against Alex Perez. Like he's been consistent. Yeah. He's got the style that wins. I'm gonna pick Mokaev. I'm gonna say submission round 2.
Okay, yeah, I think it would go to decision. Now if Kopp comes out there and just catches him really early with something, I think we have the makings of him just styling on him for the remainder of the 3 rounds, similar to like a TJ Dillashaw, Barral sort of thing. That real early hit that stuns him. Then Kopp just comes alive, and then he's just doing whatever he wants to do. But I just don't see that happening, man. I think it's just going to look like a textbook fight.
Yeah. Moving on from there, I'm sure this is the fight you're most looking forward to talking to, because obviously you're this man's biggest fan. And I'm not talking about Paddy Pimblett. I'm talking about the man formerly known as Bobby Green. It's now King Green now, right?
Yeah.
King Green.
It's been that for a while, I believe. Yeah.
Legally?
Bobby King Green. Oh, legally. Oh, I just thought his nickname. But yeah, legally. Yeah.
Yeah. Now he's legally King Green. My goodness. This is a fight that I thought, could happen for a while now, even though you had thoughts of Bobby Green versus Max Holloway, which is just,
which
some of the wildest things.
Sensational.
A sensational loss for Bobby Green. That's what it would be.
But it would be a great fight. It would be a great fight.
I guess you clearly want to see Bobby get beat up now. I thought you were a fan of him. You just want to see him get beat up.
I am a big fan of Bobby Green. And this is a great fight for me because it's a fighter who I've really liked for a long time. I've always enjoyed watching Bobby Green against somebody who I really don't like in Paddy Pimblett. I mean, it's just a wonderful combination. Like this is wonderful. This is great. Like Paddy Pimblett is not good, and Bobby Green is going to chip.
What are you saying? He's never lost in the UFC. He's fantastic.
Paddy, okay, he definitely lost that to Jerry Gordon. Paddy Pimblett is going to get styled on. I'm telling you now, he's going to get styled. Pimblett takes way too much damage. He runs in chin first. Everything he does is very sloppy. Green even if for all of Green's faults and as much as his career has stalled out at times, he's always been a very dangerous style fighter for just about everybody. It's very, very difficult to look very good against Bobby Green. This style of fight that Pimblett likes to fight is like this bulldozer it's like a bull in a china shop. I think Green plays Matador. I think he uses clearly superior footwork, clearly superior shot selection, and just works him over. What he did to Jim Miller, I think we're going to see something very similar against Pimblett. It's probably just going to look a lot worse.
So he's gonna finish him? Do you think?
I think he might get a late TKO, but I could see this going to a decision. Pimblett's not going to look the same when the decision is read.
Every point you made is accurate. Bobby Green's a better fighter, without a doubt. There's two numbers that concern me about Bobby Green and how they go in MMA. One is the number 37, and that's his age, and he's actually going to be 38 in 2 months. And then the other number is 48. That's how many fights he has. And that's how, that counts in all the training. And we've seen so many times where people just hit a certain point and they just completely fall off the table. And he's like so overdue for that moment where he goes full Tony Ferguson and all of a sudden punches become harder to take. And he can't pull the trigger. Like, this may not happen here, but I have a weird feeling it is, because he should be Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett has no business winning this fight, and watch him win it just because all of a sudden the UFC perfectly timed it. It's like they had a setting on the oven. They were like, okay, Bobby Green is finally cooked enough to finally give him the patty so he can win, and Paddy gets a big win. And I just feel like this perfect timing. I wouldn't be mad if I'm wrong, but I'm gonna pick a Paddy Pimblett uninteresting, just barely win, split decision, because he's going to get that hometown judging, and I think that's going to be a part of it too. He's also that the fact that he's in there, he's probably gotten to prepare. Bobby Green's got to travel across. Hopefully, he does it in advance, and it's going to be weird timing. I think there's just elements that are going to help Paddy Pimblett. I'm going to go Paddy Pimblett, split decision, barely. Moving on from there. Co-main event. This is a good fight. This is a really interesting fight. I'm looking forward to this fight. That is reigning interim heavyweight champion, let's just say real heavyweight champion at this point, because the other champion doesn't fight at all.
The champ, Tom Aspinall. Yes,
the heavyweight champ, Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blaydes. Curtis Blaydes, after years of being like a stalwart, top 5 heavyweight, but just keep every time coming up short against title shot. He finally gets his title shot. Really interesting matchup. Both dangerous on the feet. Both are very good grappling wise in different ways. Very even kind of matchup going into the fight. Tom Aspinall is a big favorite. Understandably, he's really never lost in the UFC other than an injury loss, which was to Curtis Blaydes. How does this fight go? This is rematch, because the first one we really didn't get to see much the first time around. How do you think this plays out? Because this is a big fight for both of them, and both of them are kind of on runs and really got some good momentum going into this fight.
Man, I'm going back and forth with this one a lot. We didn't get much of a sample size of what the two of them together looks like, but I'm leaning toward Aspinall here because he's just a guy who's lighter on his feet. He's a guy who has just more tools to use, and Blaydes, I would say, has more power. He's certainly like a charge forward sort of guy. If he gets on top of Aspinall, it's a bad day at the office. But I don't know if he quite does that, and even if he does, I mean, we've seen Blaydes get the better of someone only to just get slumped, seconds later. We've seen that, and granted, it was against Ngannou and Derek Lewis, two of the heaviest hitters that the division has ever seen. But Tom Aspinall don't hit light. And he's also far more technical than both of them. I think Aspinall edges this one out. And I say edge it out because I think there are going to be a lot of competitive moments, but I don't think we see the scorecards in this one. Give me Aspinall fourth round TKO.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to. It just Curtis Blaydes, he has everything to be a world champion. He has all the tools. He can win this fight for sure. But there's just like that. That's always been that kind of ingredient, that championship ingredient he's always lacked. In the biggest fights, he doesn't come up big. I mean, arguably one of his biggest wins of his career is the Aspinall thing. I mean, Aspinall got injured. The Jailton Almeida fight that's a good one, but that was partly like Almeida just fighting absolutely stupid, staying in there for like a takedown, just let himself get hammer fisted into oblivion. I agree. I just think he has the tools to get Aspinall done, but even if he gets Aspinall done, Aspinall's a very talented jiu-jitsu guy. That's not an easy thing, you know. So I just feel Aspinall has all the skills. He's just that transition from, like you said, he just rushes it. He doesn't have like those really slick transitions to transition from his striking into his wrestling and catch people off guard. It's kind of just his athleticism and just, you know, using his strength. And I think Aspinall's that kind of fighter, that he's like that next level guy that's just gonna be hard to get him with that. I'm gonna go same thing. 4th round TKO. I agree with you too. I think it'll be competitive. I think there'll be moments where Blades is winning. He'll get a takedown. He'll probably win a round and stuff like that. Maybe even he'll win 2 rounds going into, but I think he gets finished. Moving on from there, the main event. UFC welterweight champion Leon Edwards returns. Also, this is a rematch against Belal Muhammad, a guy who's been working at a title shot for a long time. He finally gets his title shot. One of the better stories in the UFC about grinding through big winning streak. Very likable fighter. The first fight, even though it ended with an eye poke,
right.
I don't think it was going great for Belal. That said, he's better since then, but then also Leon is better since then. He's beaten Kamaru Usman twice since then, beat Colby Covington twice. I mean, once since then. He's a better fighter. Give me a reason why this fight will be different the second time than it was the first time. Because
Leon Edwards has improved greatly from, you know, a performance where up until the eye poke looked like he was winning very clearly to me. I mean, since then, he knocks out Kamaru Usman, as you said, and then I think it's more important to think about that rematch with Usman, or the trilogy fight, I should say, with Usman, and how he clearly leveled up. He leveled up something spectacular in between the second and third Usman fights, and we were looking at a different guy who had this next level takedown defense, had perfect timing and just this counter punch. It was like everything was so perfect and so beautifully put together. Meanwhile, Belal Muhammad has continued winning, and he's looked great, but we're also talking about a guy who didn't do quite what he could have against Gilbert Burns with one arm. I think we're talking about the bar none best welterweight, possible best fighter in the sport right now against a guy who's really good. And I think this is going to be something where we see that there are very, very, very clear levels to this. And Leon Edwards is on another level. And we talked about this before. You can't buy into MMA math and, one person beats one person, they should beat another person, those kind of things. But just on a technical level, it's hard for me to wrap my head around the idea that, Belal Muhammad, who's also just turned 36, he's not young, is going to be a better grappler than Colby and Kamaru Usman. And I think those two have proven at the highest levels they're very talented at mixing their styles, and they have unique thing like the pressure, or their Kamaru's in his case, he's a good striker. It's just I can't wrap my head around saying, oh yeah, Belal Muhammad's going to be able to do what they couldn't do. Now maybe say, oh, Colby Covington wasn't the same fighter, that he wasn't prime Colby. Kamaru underestimated. Maybe he's not prime Kamaru, but even then, I mean, at 36, this ain't prime Belal Muhammad as an athlete, maybe mentally and stuff like that. As a fighter, he's his best version, but Leon Edwards is dead right in the middle of his prime, still an athletic prime. He's shut down, stopped from elite level grapplers. And he did it. He fought already. Like he's felt Belal Muhammad's strength. He felt how his techniques against the cage. He's felt those things. And I think that's a big advantage going into this. I don't see it. Could I see Belal Muhammad make it all the way to the end? Sure. I'll go with that. I'll go with the decision. He's not gonna finish him because Muhammad is tough. He'll maybe make it boring at times and try to hold him against the cage and run out minutes and stuff like that, and make it go to decision. But yeah, I'm not seeing that one going to a finish. But
Wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening to this episode of the podcast, please like, share, subscribe, comment, wherever it is, you see, whatever platform you're listening and watching. What are you listening? What do you think is going to happen to UFC 304 with some of the biggest fights on that card? Moving on from there, you had the pleasure as a representative of Ringside to be at the recent Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal 2 fight. Take it away. What was your experience? I know you had some interesting moments. You covered a little bit in video form on the YouTube channel for Ringside. Did Diaz versus Masvidal 2 leave a lasting impression on you for the wrong reasons?
Yes and no. Like it was definitely an experience. I'll put it that way. So I believe it was the first time that I've gone out on assignment for Ringside Intel. You know, I've been credentialed under Sherdog many times. I believe I've been credentialed for MMA on Point once or twice before. And Sportsnot, yeah. And what else? What else was I credentialed under? My old YouTube channel. I did a Bellator for my old YouTube channel, the Walkout Network. So like I've done the credential thing before, but this was a reminder of what boxing coverage is like, right? You know, I think us as guys who we watch and follow boxing, we cover boxing plenty on Ringside Intel and Sportsnot, plenty of boxing content there. But you know, our bread and butter is MMA. We are two guys who originally came from MMA, and that's sort of the baseline of how we relate to the sports world. So you cover a UFC fight, and man, no one does the logistics like the UFC. I'll say it all day from the top of a mountain. You can be hypercritical of all sorts of things with the UFC as far as their business practices and how they pay fighters and Dana White's persona and the ties into right-wing politics that are forced on the broadcast. We can write essays about the things that are wrong with the UFC or just take away from just enjoying the experience. But man, if you are there to cover a UFC fight, they do their best to make sure all you have to do is work. Like the only thing you got to do is just go there, just show up, everything else taken care of, just work, just get your stuff done, and that's it. I mean, we're talking about the entire way. I was trying to get more content up, but like I didn't have outlets for like to plug my laptop up to do certain things. Like it was frustrating. that was definitely frustrating. And even like the PR people I talked to, was one dude, shout out to Andrew, nice guy, very nice guy, talked to in the venue, super dude, accommodating and all that, very, very helpful. You know, so I'm not gonna talk bad about the staff. But I think when we see an event like that, behind the scenes, there are so many things that are just chaotic and wrong because they just don't know what they're doing yet. And even when they employ the people who have done this before, there's certain things that just aren't in place that they're just not considering. Now on fight night was the wildest. And so I was texting you the whole time and you were like, you know, stunned at this.
Yeah, crazy.
So I get there and I get my credential. I know I got it sitting right here, right? Got this this credential badge. I see my credential badge and it's got a seat number on it. So I'm like, okay, this is one of those times where they sort of put you in like a seat in the arena. Sometimes they section off like a media part in the arena. So if they don't want to give you a ringside, like, all right, cool. I did that with the first Wilder Fury fight. All right, no big deal. So if I get there and it's not outfitted for media, so there's literally no power outlets. It's just a seat. We're right by the broadcast booth, so we did get to see like Brian Campbell and Josh Thompson on the broadcast talking. So that was whatever. But we're in this section and there's no outlets. There's nothing really. Then we get somebody that works at Honda Center. He comes over and I could tell the look on his face. My man did not want to break this news to us. He says, "Hey guys, so I know you guys are media, right?" And we show him my badges. And he's like, "Yeah, so I was told to come here and let you know that now they opened up this section to be bought for these tickets to be bought by fans." So I'm like, okay.
My Lord.
So it says, so there's possibility that your seat can be sold. So when that happens, you gotta like leave and find some other place to set up. So I'm like, okay, well, is the media room where the press conference going to be? Is that open? Oh, not yet. When is that going to be open? Oh, sometime after the fight. Like, okay. So we just like wander the halls or something. And the dude was like, I'm sorry, I have no idea what's going on, but this is what they told me to tell you. Fortunately, the seats didn't get sold, but all the ones behind us were sold. So it was like just fans hovering all over us. It couldn't get anywhere. But by this point, it was kind of like, all right, I'm gonna keep my laptop in my bag. I don't want to leave my bag because I don't want to get jacked when I go take a leak. So so like bag and we got it's other guys that got like cameras and their tripods on stuff. There's people with full on equipment just sitting in these seats with so that's what it was, man. It was I'm telling you, man, like going to boxing events is always like this free for all. So even after the fight, they come get us to take us to where the press conference is going to be. And I swear you would have thought it was like a red carpet at some movie premiere, because all the fighters and celebrities and stuff that were in this hallway that we had to walk through to get to the room. And keep in mind, it's people with equipment. It's people with bags of tripods and sound modules and all this stuff, and they're carrying all these heavy bags, and they're trying to walk through this sea of just rich folks and boxers and MMA fighters all drinking and hanging out in backstage and stuff, just all in the way. And there's the PR people were just running through the hallway, not even waiting for us to catch up. Man, I'm telling you, it was an experience. The fight itself, though, I think the fight itself, it delivered from an entertainment standpoint. The atmosphere in the building felt like a big fight, which is ironic now seeing the news coming out about Nate Diaz suing Famio. Yep. So definitely open to having that discussion if you want to have it. I did do a quick reaction video to that dropped earlier today. But man, it was something. It was something. Boxing events are always their own little world.
Now we'll save the views for the video we have up. People go watch it there, get everything they need to go. But yeah, I guess it just shows you a lot too. In that, like you said, the UFC, how organized they are. It's just a well-oiled machine. They've been doing this for so long, and they hire the best people to do this. So they're trained at. They've been doing it a long time, and if they leave, they find the next best one. And like, Nate and Jorge Masvidal, they're not with Matchroom. They're not with Golden Boy, who I'm sure they all have their own problems. They probably just were like I can only imagine who they got to promote this event. And plus, they're two fighters who don't give a damn about the media. So I'm sure them and their people and their handlers and saw an opportunity to sell more tickets, which from what I see that they did pretty well. It was like 14,000 in the arena. It was a big sell-off. So they clearly didn't
18,000 or something was
18. They didn't need to sell those seats, but screw over the media just to get a money grab and just to get more money. It's a shame.
Apparently they needed the more money.
Yeah, it's your family.
They needed it, man.
Yeah, that's the only money they made. It's a shame. And I'm glad you're talking about it. It needs to be said, and then these things need to be out there. But hey, at least the fight was good. At least you got that.
I definitely enjoyed the experience overall. Like I'm certainly not the type to go to an event and expect the red carpet rolled out for me because I write or something or I podcast. I'm not looking for that at all. Like I just want to be able to go in and work. Like I just want to do my job, and I get to enjoy a fight as I'm doing my job. It's fantastic. But this was a time where it was hard to do my job, and that's really the only thing I could really rightfully have any complaint about. But I think from the fighter's perspective, they shouldn't have to worry about that or care about what's going on with media accommodations. They got a trained killer in front of them that's intent on doing them brain damage. That should be where their focus is at. But it's up to the people behind the scenes that are running the show to worry about these things and to think forward on these things. And once again, that just shows the difference in logistics. That just shows the difference in how things are run for the UFC as opposed to other combat sports entities. Bellator was always good and on point with their stuff. Yeah. I have yet to see a Bellator under the new regime with PFL, but I have covered PFL before, and I had no issues with there as well. Yeah. So I do think it's more of a boxing thing as opposed to an MMA thing. Interestingly enough, was it a couple years back, more than a few years now, it was a while ago, back when we were at Sherdog, I had a conversation with Burt Watson. And Burt Watson was the guy behind the scenes at the UFC that was yelling at the fighters to get them motivated and sort of like getting the morale up backstage. I had a conversation with him about sort of the difference in how these things are run, and he was like, "Hey, man," he's like, not to toot my own horn, but you know, a lot of the things that work well stem from me. He's like, you know, you liked how things ran at Bellator, you like how things ran at Invicta, you like how things ran at PFL. I was like, well, all the guys that are running that, they came under me. I trained them. You know, they took their cues from me.
Yeah.
So I'm the one that got the UFC rolling this way. I got, you know, which led to Bellator and PFL and Invicta getting the ball rolling with them. He's like, a lot of these other promotions that haven't been part of my family tree just don't have that same level of thought toward all the variables. And that's really what it is. UFC, they eliminate a lot of the variables. So you kind of know what's going on and you just don't have to worry. You just work.
Yeah. Burt's really one of the pioneers of sport that doesn't get enough credit how important he was. Speaking of pioneers for the UFC, Ronda Rousey. She had the memoir that came out earlier this year. She had a lot of comments. As a person that covers WWE, also for Ringside, a lot of things to say about WWE. She did another interview because now she has a comic book coming out. She's continuing this life outside the UFC. Hasn't won the UFC in a while. Hasn't returned to a UFC event once since she left the company. And in this interview, she talked about, again, how she's dealt with concussion. That was part of it in the memoir. She said concussions are part of why she had the loss to Holly Holm. And she had a concussion where she fell down the stairs. But now, not only did she get a concussion where she fell down the stairs, she's claiming she has had the concussion issues since she was 6 years old. Come on. 6-year-old concussion, Ronda. I mean, with all this stuff, the not going back to UFC, the negative attitude, like even with the stuff she's done in WWE, with her negative attitude, even she was pushed to the moon, got to headline of WrestleMania. I mean, you know, has she diminished the once great legacy she had in this sport by just being ridiculous outside of it?
I would say it's unfair to say that she's damaged her legacy, because what she's done for the sport and what she's done in the cage cannot be taken away no matter what she does. Like, you know, it's undeniable that she's a pioneer. She is responsible for a lot of the boom in popularity in mixed martial arts, and certainly the influx of women and like the great women's fights that we have now can trace right back to her. So let's not take that away from her. Let's not disparage her in that regard. But everywhere else, let's just call it what it is. She is the first Juliana Pena. Okay. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, and I think part of it is just this inherent delusion that a professional fighter needs to have in order to succeed. To succeed at the level she has, you have something got to be wrong with your brain, because this is not how normal people think and want to live. A normal person does not want to wake up at 5 a.m. to run 5 miles a day, and then eat only egg whites and oatmeal, and then go train for 3 hours a day, and then and then these media obligations and stuff. No real person wants to do that. But fighters are a little nuts, man. So they have to have that in order to succeed. The problem is that part of their brain that's still a little scrambled. It only gets more scrambled with the CTE. It only gets more scrambled with the fights, and then it remains scrambled when it's all over with. So we're left with this person who their entire purpose was to beat up people for money. And when you take that away, now what?
Yeah.
You know, and even if you find gaps, like Ronda has found different revenue streams and different ways to stay relevant, and with Hollywood and pro wrestling and now her comic book and whatever other business ventures she may have. But there's still got to be that void where like this huge piece of your life is just no longer there, or at least not there in the same capacity that it once was. So it gets filled with nonsense. And this is nonsense. Like, she's done this remarkable revisionist history on how the sport looks toward her. We still regard Ronda Rousey as a true pioneer of the sport that would belong on our Mount Rushmore of MMA. That's somebody who's that important and that great. But man, like, just because you lost, and just because there were some people that were critical of you, doesn't mean that everyone hates you. It doesn't mean that the whole sport is against you. Reality caught up to you. Not every fighter is going to have this dominant run forever. Like, she didn't evolve in her technique, and everyone else around her did. Very simple. Happens all the time. Like, it's not a hit job against you. It's not this. And she came in with a lot of distractions and overconfident against Holly Holm and paid the price. She tried to go in there and outbox a champion, like seriously, a world champion level boxer. She was actually believing that hype. That's not the fault of the fans. That's not the fault of the media. That's your fault for not being realistic. That's your fault for keeping the wrong people around you that fed into all that foolishness. I just don't get why she's targeting everyone else. And then remember, after she lost to Home, how she just decided she was just going to shun the media and all the fans, all the people that elevated her to that position, and to where it was just you just doing goofy stuff. When she had the stare off with Nunes, for was it 208 where she came back, or 207 or whatever UFC that was. And she had that stare off and just walked away right away because she didn't want to answer any questions. Like just goofy stuff. This whole even we saw the traces of the goofy before when she beat Miesha Tate in the UFC after they had their run on Tough, and it was like I was like, oh, I didn't shake her hand because she said something bad about the castmates on the show and they're my family, and you don't talk bad about my family. Shut up. Yeah. Shut up. Just goofy stuff. Just goofy. Like, just because you are one of the best fighters that's ever done it, just because you have this high regard as far as what you've accomplished as a combat athlete, does not mean that you're not goofy, and doesn't mean that we're not going to call you out for being goofy and saying goofy things. Goofy.
What frustrates me about it is, and I think, maybe affecting her legacy, maybe it doesn't, but it affects how people view her. And it's kind of how like BJ Penn getting knocked out of the bar and running for governor and whatever, it checked out. It changed the perception. Like the best comparison I can make for the people out there watching that watch UFC and watch wrestling is Bret Hart. Bret Hart has become very bitter about how his career ended. It ended from like a stupid move from another star wrestler, kicked him in the head, gave him a concussion. His career ended early. And it's like he's become so bitter on how it ended, he's forgotten the amazing journey he went on to get there and the people involved with that journey. And that's the thing with Ronda. She's become very bitter. Like, do you think you'd get a comic and movie roles from a judo gold medal? Nothing against a judo gold medal, but like it's because of being in the UFC. And without a doubt, she had played a huge role in it, but other people played a role in that. And even then, you still had great success. What are you so bitter about? Yeah, you got concussions. It is what it is. Like a person that's handling it perfectly and was the same kind of brash and the same kind of successful, the same kind of pioneer. You want to Jacek. Like she's handling her, her fall from grace like a graceful former champion. Like she's still around the sport. She's grateful for being a part of it. She enjoys talking to the media. Like she's become a great representative and ambassador. Even though her career is over, she probably could have kept fighting more. Was a better fighter than Ronda was, and just handling it without a bitterness. Losses and everything comes for everybody. Like for Ronda to have, without nothing taken away from how she's earned her position, she's gotten a leg up and a lot of opportunities other people don't get because of the spotlight of being in the UFC and all those things. And just like, why be so bitter about such a fantastic life? Like you've gotten to be a gold medalist, a UFC fighter, a WWE fighter, broke ground, like that
action movie roles, like.
Yeah, like that didn't happen just because of you. Like if there's not a Miesha Tate, no one cares. If there's not a Becky Lynch and Charlotte in WWE, no one cares. Like, there's elements that go to just beyond you. And you're still this historic figure. It's a shame. And I think it's taken fans' perception of when Ronda makes a comment. Before it was like, oh, let me click on it. I'm curious. I like Ronda Rousey. It's now Ronda Rousey says something. It's an eye roll. Like, oh my god, she's just complaining.
Scroll
again.
past. I can't take that in my soul. I can't do it. Like I wish that. And then there will be knuckleheads. They're going to say really stupid things and go off base and be disrespectful. That's a given in any sport. Any fandom invites some level of buffoonery. But I do think it would be great for her to just come to a UFC event. Yes. Come to an event, sit down with all the preferred, with all the stars and everything, and let that camera go on her in that screen, and that arena will erupt.
Yes.
It's like she's too foolish to realize how beloved she really is.
Yep.
And it's really amazing. And like all the girls that were inspired, like the girls now that you see in these martial arts classes, that like I'm,
Yes.
we're taking my son around to different schools to see what martial art he wants to train in, and we're seeing little girls who were little girls then who are now teenagers, and they're training because of Ronda Rousey. Like
Yes.
that's a massive legacy, and it's like instead of being grateful for that, she's harping on a lot of the things that were under her control that she fumbled.
Yeah, and I'm sure it can be pain. Like, oh well, this is the question she's getting. There's ways to answer questions.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I feel like concussions, had an effect. But man, I had a great run, and every great run comes to an end. And I lost, and I was a dominant champion, and I hope I had a great influence on the sport, and wishing the best for the fighters and the next women in the UFC. Like, it's just such a bitter, angry. It's a shame. I mean. But we're close to wrapping up. Of course, wherever you are watching this, listening to this, what are your thoughts on Ronda Rousey's, how her perception may be changing after such an illustrious career in UFC and even an impactful career in WWE based on some of the comments she's had? And of course, like, share, subscribe to the channels, whatever platforms you're watching on. Two quick last topics we're going to talk about. One of them is, we've talked about it here, the idea of Alex Pereira moving up to heavyweight, maybe becoming the first ever 3-division champion in UFC history. But recently, he kind of said meh on the idea of not moving to heavyweight. So, although he said he's not in really a rush to do that's not a major goal for him, but the idea of fighting Tom Aspinall, that doesn't intrigue him much. He'd actually rather fight John Jones, understandably. Who doesn't want to fight John Jones' big fight, but also made the point that he kind of just feels like he's on a bit of a different level than Tom Aspinall and just kind of wants the huge legacy superstar fights. Understandably, he's kind of earned it too. But what are your thoughts on that? Is it a bad decision? Is it a smart decision? I mean, the case could be made, man, John Jones, that's going to be a terrible, tough fight for him. But then maybe say, oh, Tom Aspinall's young heavyweight, legitimate natural heavyweight. That's a dangerous fight. Like, what are your thoughts on him not being interested in Tom Aspinall fight? Is he missing a real opportunity to make history instead of taking a risk against someone like John Jones, the greatest fighter of all time, who's still pretty good even now?
Well, I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Because first of all, both of those are tough fights for him. Both of those are tough potential style matchups. Winnable fights, but very losable fights as well. So I think if we were to break down the X's and O's of both of those, we'd come with a lot of different conclusions as to what possibly can happen. So I don't think this is necessarily a case of him trying to, I mean, you can't really duck somebody that's not in your weight class, but for lack of a better word, it's not like him ducking Aspinall. I do think it's a true like legacy sort of play, but I think what he's missing is beating whoever holds a heavyweight belt would be the big piece of the legacy for him. Having John Jones' name attached to that certainly boosts the value in a way, at least when you look back in a history book. But I think right now it's just a matter of someone with a heavyweight belt, no matter who that is. If it's John Jones, if it's Stipe, if it's Aspinall, if it's Blades, if it's Almeida, whoever, that would be the bigger piece of his legacy than, John Jones, just that name, and it would play into the 3-champ thing of like possibility of being the first person to have 3 UFC titles. And then you couple in the 2 titles in glory, and it's like, oh, this is potentially the greatest combat athlete that's ever walked the face of the earth. Like that would happen no matter who he beat for a heavyweight belt.
Yeah, and if he lost to either guy, I mean, he'd be the underdog probably in either of those fights. But I just think he's on the precipice of something really special in an era where the UFC is willing to let people go and fight for titles in other divisions easily. Aspinall would gladly take the fight. It just seems like there's a clearer avenue to that. Now that he's defended his title, Tom Aspinall is having his fight. His dance card is going to open, or even Curtis Blade's dance card is going to open after this fight. I think neither of them would be against taking out a fight because they'll feel they're the favorites. They feel they have advantages. They could win that fight. They could beat this legendary figure. Like John Jones fight still November. What happens after that? Like, he can continue to build his legacy at light heavyweight, but you are on the precipice of singular history. Like no one else has done this or even come close in the UFC to possibly being a 3-division champion. Like it's a opportunity that we can maybe say will never be matched. Like it may never come again. Like it's hard enough to be a 2 division. This guy could be a 3 division champion. And honestly, I think Aspinall would be the more winnable the fights. It can definitely be debated, but just on a speed level, obviously Aspinall's big, strong, maybe take him down, but he's gonna be faster than him. We've seen how nasty his counter abilities are, striking. Like I feel like he could beat, he can get to Aspinall. John Jones is just there's a reason he's the greatest of all time. He'll play the distance game. He's similar size. The speed maybe not be a big difference, and then he could always go to that wrestling that's just a game changer kind of thing. And he blends his wrestling and his grappling as good as anybody. I think it's just a fight more fraught with losing opportunity. But yeah, it's a weird thing. I think it's a bit of a miss for Pereira.
Well, I think also too, it might be a more strategic play to put those words out there, because if we do actually see Jones and Stipe in November, because as far as I know, it's not officially scheduled. That's just sort of what we're hearing and what's being projected. Now, we saw that fight get made before and it fell apart. And Jones is also a guy, and Stipe have not necessarily been the most reliable to be consistently fighting. Maybe that's a play to be a late notice replacement.
Yeah, makes sense.
That would make a lot of sense to me too. If he's just around, and the possibility that he gets a step in there, Stipe gets injured or Jones gets injured, and he steps in and says, "Hey, I'll do this." Especially if it's Stipe that's still available. He's like, and Stipe is down for that fight. It's like, "I'll do this if you attach an interim title to it." Then he gets another shot at that 3-champ legacy. So I think this might be a little strategy there, but I can't imagine that he sincerely doesn't feel that an Aspinall fight would add to his legacy, though. I just can't see that.
All right, last topic. There's been a lot of talk about Shakur Stevenson in recent weeks. He won his last bout. He's one of the top fighters at lightweight. He's super talented, former Olympian, silver medalist. But there's this narrative about him from all directions in and around the industry about that he's just a boring fighter. It's always tough to say that about an undefeated fighter who's a champion, but he's just not the most exciting fighter. His last fight, a lot of people felt that he needed to get a knockout. He did not. He got a decision. You are more the boxing expert between us. Like, what are your thoughts on this narrative about Shakur Stevenson being boring? Is it something to it? Is it unfair? Is it matchmaking? And is it having a big effect on maybe him not getting the fights he wants, despite a pretty impressive record and resume so far?
I think it's a little bit of everything, right? Because it's certainly not the most aesthetically pleasing, right? Depending on what you're watching for. I mean, people had the same complaints about Floyd Mayweather. Like, he wasn't always fun to watch him, but you still were watching a masterclass in boxing. And I think with Shakur Stevenson, you are watching a masterclass in boxing. He's incredible. Like, he's incredible, and his skill is undeniable. That doesn't mean it's going to be entertaining. And if the goal is simply to be entertaining, then we're talking about something different. Then we're talking about Masvidal versus Diaz. Then we're talking about these things that aren't exactly the true sport. But I don't think there should be any sort of backlash against people for calling out, saying this isn't fun for me to watch. Like, if it's not fun, then don't watch it. Like, that makes total sense. Now, I do think with free agency, potential free agency opens up some options for him. Like, if he goes to another promotion, like Bob Arum at Top Rank, doesn't exactly have the best track record for a variety of reasons. A lot of the biggest fights that some of the guys that have come under him have been away from him. Like, Floyd became who he was after leaving Arum. Terrence Crawford is who he is after leaving Arum. And then there's also that thing hovering over Arum as far as like the thoughts that he is not good at promoting black fighters, that there's a tinge of prejudice in the way he does his business. I think those are all very good possibilities that are contributing to this. Like, but still, man, I still want to see Shakur Stevenson against some of the best, and maybe some of those guys that are the other elites of the elite. Maybe they bring the excitement out. Maybe you put them in front of a Tank Davis and you get the best thing you've ever seen in your life. Maybe for all the complaints that people have about Devin Haney, maybe if you put them together, maybe you get something interesting there. Maybe Teofimo Lopez has something to offer. Ryan Garcia, when he gets off of his KKK rehab or whatever he's doing, there's certainly things that can be done from a matchmaking perspective, but I think we're also looking at something that is the product of a problem with boxing that I think kind of started with Floyd. Shout out to Floyd for doing what he did and how he did it and making all the money that he did. But this whole need to just hold on to your undefeated record.
Yeah.
I want the best guys to fight the best guys, and sometimes you're going to lose. Look at the heavyweight division right now. Heavyweight boxing is fantastic right now, and so many of these guys have fought each other and lost. Yeah. Joe Joyce has got losses, and he's looking great right now. Philippe Hargovic is probably going to look great when he comes back. He's got losses. Daniel Dubois, who just beat him, has losses, and he looks fantastic. Is going to fight AJ, who also has losses. It's okay to lose when you're fighting against the best, and that would be very helpful for all parties if that mentality of holding on to an undefeated record at all costs were to go away.
Yeah, and also I think, and then credit to Shakur. I think like Shakur's been looking for the big fights. He's been pushing for Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia, and he wants it. Just because like you said, he's so good. People don't want to fight him, and then he's not considered an action fighter, so they're scared. Like, if I'm going to lose, I'm not going to get the box office money I'm hoping for. But I think it unfortunately says a lot about his place that Bob Arum is letting him test for agency and not really worried about losing him. But hopefully what you're saying is the kind of thing he just maybe needs to go somewhere that maybe knows how to promote him and put him in the right kind of positions. Oscar De La Hoya's made a play for him, and we might get this fight with Zepeda, which might be the fight, that really helps elevate him. And it seems like that's where where it's kind of going. But in the end, cream rises to the top. He's too talented not to have a moment, so it'll just come. It is what it is, which is a different time where it's about bleeding than boxing, and that's what kind of just sells. But that's it. This is it for this edition of the Scrap Report. As always, please, wherever you're listening or watching, whatever platform, like, share, subscribe, let us know what you think, comment, as always. And I'm Jason Burgos. He is Anthony Walker. Until next time, everybody. Bye-bye.